Now, before I start this video, I just wanted to say that this is a joke and all this stuff happened in Minecraft. Please don't kill me, Boeing. Originally, I made this video after the first incident that happened back in March. However, I didn't finish the script and a new situation has happened a little bit more recently. So I'm super happy I didn't finish the script until then because the situation got even better. Okay, so the Boeing company has in recent years become the most mistrusted and controversial major aviation company. From their overreach into the federal government to forgetting to give pilots crucial instruction, which has led to hundreds of deaths, to the extremely suspicious deaths of now multiple Boeing whistleblowers. This is why Boeing is killing people and getting away with it. In Minecraft. All of this is in Minecraft, guys. Let's start with some of the backstory on the Boeing company, because I think it sets up what's happened with them recently pretty well. The Boeing company was founded back in 1916 by William Boeing, making it one of the first aircraft manufacturers in the world, as the Wright brothers had only completed their first sort of glide thing around a decade and a half earlier. Over time, the company expanded into both a defense contractor and a commercial aircraft manufacturer, known for producing around 16,000 bombers for the United States during World War II, including over 10,000 B-17s. But they started their commercial plane business back in 1928 with the Boeing Model 80, and while it could only carry up to 12 passengers, it was still revolutionary for its time. However, after the revolution of jet engines, Boeing unveiled the 707, their first jet-propelled passenger aircraft, which began their rise to incredible success in the business of taking people far distances using planes. Jet planes were fast, pretty fuel efficient, and some versions of the 707 could hold over 200 passengers. However, while the Boeing company is still hugely successful, it wasn't until the past 25 years that the company became so controversial. This is one that I haven't really seen in any of the videos on this topic, but when I was looking into the Boeing company, this is one that really stuck out to me. Back in 2003, the Air Force announced it would lease 100 of Boeing's military planes. Lease as in borrow, not outright purchase, which I guess the US government doesn't really do that. They usually just buy the thing. Not only did that mean that the Air Force didn't actually own the aircraft, they also purchased the planes for an outrageous price, more than the price of actually buying the plane. Later that year, Darlene Druyan, a member of the Pentagon's aviation branch and a previous principal deputy secretary of the Air Force for acquisition, quit her job, and in a strange coincidence, took a job at Boeing, who paid her a generous and very nice annual salary of $250,000 a year and a signing bonus of 50 grand. According to those random websites that account for inflation, apparently that's 430 grand a year in 2024. And still that same year of 2003, the Pentagon announced that they had essentially canceled their deal and were investigating Druyan, who was sentenced to 9 months in federal prison for corruption. Wait, from Terraria? She also got a tiny fine of $5,000 and 150 hours of community service. Who did she have as her lawyer? Saul Goodman, dude? She conspired against the US government and got fined 5 grand. But you know who didn't get a small fine? Boeing, who received a fine of at least $10. Just kidding, it was $632 million. So they fired their CFO, Michael M. Sears, and he went to prison for 4 months. Anyway, this is just a really good example of the connections Boeing has, whether it be lobbying the government or just straight up hiring government agents. Basically, Boeing paid off a woman who worked at the Pentagon to give them a really good deal. You know what's worse than hiring government agents, though? Yeah, this. These are the 2 plane crashes you probably heard about, but you probably don't know the cause of these crashes and why all the 737 MAX planes were grounded that one time. Back in the early 2010s, a competing aircraft company to Boeing called Airbus released the A320neo, a smaller but much more fuel-efficient plane that was immediately very successful. Boeing saw the success of this plane, and so they decided to put different engines on the Boeing 737 and just call it the 737 MAX. The problem with the engines were that they obviously weren't really designed for the original 737, and they were really heavy, so Boeing designed a brand new MCAS system, or a Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. What that means is it would automatically correct the plane to avoid stalling or losing lift and falling out of the sky, which is probably pretty bad. But this MCAS system works nearly perfectly, and there are ways to correct it in the extremely rare circumstances where it makes a mistake. But not if you don't tell anyone it's there. That's right, if you change anything about a plane, you have to get new certification for all the pilots flying that model. So if the plane doesn't have any new technology, just engines, trust me bro, they're not different at all, then you don't have to wait for pilots to get new training. So Boeing removed information of the MCAS system from the manuals, meaning that when on October 29th, 2018, when a Boeing 737 MAX took off from Jakarta, Indonesia, and shortly after entered a nosedive and crashed, killing all 189 people on board. Nobody knew why, leading to the entire line of planes being grounded. Just kidding. They weren't grounded because there probably wasn't an issue with the plane. It's okay, guys. Until 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed in a similar manner, killing another 157 people. There were also no survivors on the second flight. After thorough investigation, all 737 MAX planes were grounded by aviation regulatory authorities around the world. It is likely that Boeing was aware of why the first plane crashed and decided not to ground their own planes, or tell the pilots about the MCAS system, or do just about anything to save the lives of the second plane. It's theorized that had either pilot known about the MCAS system and how to override it, everyone on board could have survived. Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 left the Portland International Airport in Portland, Oregon on January 5th of 2024. Shortly after takeoff, a piece of the plane tore off, causing the cabin of the 737 MAX plane to depressurize. Well, you probably heard about this. It happened fairly recently, but there are a required number of emergency exits depending on how many people a plane is equipped to hold. This 737 MAX 9 didn't require all of its emergency exits, so instead of putting in the emergency door, a plug was inserted in its place. The plug looks nearly identical to the rest of the walls of the plane with its own window and everything, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell that the plug was there unless the plug came off. Luckily, nobody was actually sitting in the seat next to the plug, so there were no deaths and only 3 minor injuries. If someone had been seated next to the plug, they would have surely been pulled out of the plane and died. So why did the plug come out? When they were working on the plane, Boeing's contractors forgot to actually put the bolts into the plug to actually secure it. 3 days after the incident on January 8th, United Airlines and Alaska Airlines both inspected their Boeing aircraft and found missing bolts on, quote, many aircraft. The FAA began an investigation into Boeing for non-compliance with regulations on new aircraft inspection. The NTSB, or National Transport Security Board, will hold an investigative hearing with Boeing on August the 6th of this year regarding the many unsafe aircraft they had sold to airlines. But now let's get to the part you were all waiting for. John Barnett was a Boeing employee who worked in quality control for 32 years. After leaving his job during the 2010s, he filed a whistleblower complaint with OSHA. He posed that because he had raised concerns about the safety of Boeing aircraft, his career had been destroyed by upper management. Many of his safety claims against Boeing were corroborated by Boeing's internal management, including a claim that 25% of oxygen masks just wouldn't work in an emergency. So yeah, spin the wheel if you want to survive on a Boeing plane. Basically, he worked in quality control trying to keep people safe, and Boeing destroyed his career when he actually did his job. His whistleblower case lasted 4 years, but ended in favor of Boeing in 2021. However, he immediately filed an appeal and the case continued. In March of 2024, Barnett failed to show up to the 3rd day of his deposition. Basically, he was giving evidence against Boeing. Police soon located Barnett dead in his truck in the parking lot of the hotel he was previously staying at. The cause of the death was a gunshot wound, and the coroner ruled it a thing that you can't say on YouTube, but when you do the thing to yourself. After the body's discovery, Boeing put out a very nice statement saying, "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing, and our thoughts are with his family and friends." So basically, this guy goes through all the trouble for years to take on Boeing. He even filed an appeal after his first 4 years of trial doesn't work out, and suddenly during the trial where he's actually giving crucial evidence, he magically decides to do a not nice thing to himself. And it can't be a robbery that ended in his death because it appears nothing was stolen from his car. Also, a robber wouldn't shoot someone and then set it up like that because they wouldn't really have the time to do something like that. Plus, he'd need to use Barnett's gun to do it, and yeah, it makes no sense. To complicate this even more, most no longer being in this corporeal realm, very few of those things end with the deceased still holding their gun, especially with their finger on the trigger, because their hand will fall down and the gun will drop to the ground. And so the fact that he was still holding the gun and had his finger on the trigger, it just doesn't make any sense. It's almost like somebody set it up like that. As I said, he was found dead outside of a hotel he had previously stayed at while he was in whatever place I forgot. I'll put it on screen. When he was in that city, he was staying in a hotel, and he had checked out of his hotel on Friday morning, went to the deposition on Friday afternoon, and was found dead on Saturday morning in the same hotel's parking lot. You know, the one he checked out of. Why would you check out of a hotel and not have a room anymore, go to a deposition, then go back to the same hotel? Why would you be at that hotel? Why would you go back to the hotel you don't even have a room for anymore? Also, this isn't like a small hotel or anything. There are 14 floors in this hotel. Look at some pictures of it. So there would be lots of people there, and no, Barnett's gun didn't have a suppressor or something like that. So of the hundreds of people at this hotel, how did no one notice a gunshot in the front parking lot? And even if this was a self thing, why, dude? He's been in this court case for years and years. All his family, all his lawyers said he was doing perfectly fine. He was perfectly happy. He thought the trial was going well. But before I pass my final judgment on this situation, let's get into the second Boeing whistleblower who died under mysterious circumstances. Joshua Dean worked for a contractor called Spirit Aerosystems, a company who has taken a lot of the blame for problems with the 737 MAX series. He raised questions about drilled holes in the plane's bulkhead that could lead to cabin depressurization mid-flight. And with John Barnett's claims about the questionable reliability of oxygen masks, you could probably see why that would be a problem if you don't have any air. Boeing later announced a different problem with the MAX planes and fired Dean, which he claimed was a way to make him a scapegoat. Following the whole door plug situation I talked about earlier, some of Dean's coworkers at Spirit confirmed allegations he'd made against Boeing and Spirit. Then on April the 21st of this year, Dean checked himself into the emergency room, saying he was having difficulties breathing. He was found to have influenza B, even though April is long after flu season ends. He quickly developed MRSA as a symptom of influenza B, then developed a pneumonia, and before the end of the month, Dean was dead. Dean's family explained that he was extremely health conscious and never got sick, so the fact that he had such a severe reaction to a random disease is pretty strange and feels a little bit more than coincidental. Getting influenza B just outside of flu season, just randomly when you're super health conscious, is a little bit suspicious. As for whether or not Boeing is in the wrong for some of its scandals, the non-assassination ones, we'll get to those, it's pretty clear that they willingly neglected to give pilots information that could have helped them to stop the MCAS system from crashing those two planes. The door plug incident is also just a sign that Boeing has very low quality control standards, but as for the two deaths, I have no idea, dude. The first one is so comically obvious that it's kind of hard to believe it's Boeing. John Barnett had everything to live for, and during a crucial time in his trial, he decides to just give up. But it seems too obvious. It would make much more sense for them to give a whistleblower maybe a deadly virus or but still, with Boeing's government connections, I think it's unlikely they see any huge repercussions for their scandals. The only thing that they really have to lose are customers and stockholders, and I think killing whistleblowers is a great way to lose stockholders. So I'm not sure if it was Boeing themselves. Don't get me wrong, I totally believe both whistleblowers were killed by like Agent 47 or something. But for Boeing, this seems so business ruining that it almost feels like a competitor is killing the whistleblowers just to kill Boeing's reputation, or something else weird is happening here. But I'd love to hear your opinions, guys. This has been the 4th video on my channel, and if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Have a nice day.